Hey y'all, it's Sarah, and today I am working on a cute, simple, quick, not really technical skilled birthday page in rainbow colors because it is March and I think of rainbows when I think of St. Patrick's Day and pot of gold and that thing. So rainbow colors, you can do it in whatever color scheme, super, super simple. But I needed to kind of get ahead of myself, so I need something quick. I'm about to pull this stack of markers over. And I told you guys I don't get hung up on brands because I really have a love for all markers and pens and all of them. So I just grabbed a bunch of colors. I'm likely going to probably predominantly work with this style, this kids art style marker. I've got generics, all the generics. Every single one of them is a different. This one is Dollar Tree, Crazy Art, my grocery store. So that's what I'm going to be using, but you can use brush markers if that's what you have. The tip really is not going to matter, not necessarily, but we're going to try to do some somewhat straight lines, so chisel tip if that's more helpful to you. Let's get started. For me, if you've hung out with me on any of these, I like to do a couple of things. I usually need a spot for weather, and then meals, and I only do dinner. I also have been throwing in hydration just as a reminder because some of us need that. And I may get a chance to show a little extra like a sleep tracker or something like that, or an alternative in this one. Let's go ahead. I'm going to share that I will use stencils in this, so if you have some, you might want to grab them. Mostly squares and rectangles, but you can totally do it with a ruler. And that's pretty much all I'm playing with. So this is really kind of limited supplies because anything I do, you could totally do with a ruler, without a ruler. Try to freehand it if you can, if some of you are good at that. So I'm going to get started normally with my weather, and let's see if I have one. Okay, so this one may be pretty easily visible. I usually put a line across, and for a lot of mine I just do marker lines across. This time I'm actually using squares because I wanted to show this and I wanted to be able to get a little bit more color on here, a little bit more marker color on each one, because this is a really super simple design for me. Typically I add probably a little more doodle work than this is going to be. So for me, I'm looking through my stencils. I'm trying to hunt one that's about the size of a folder label. So that's kind of what I'm looking for. And the stencil I'm actually using, it's like furniture and house design stencil, so they have a lot of squares and circles. I use these because the boxes typically fit really well inside of my big size planner. So I'm looking for something like that. But like I said, you could certainly pencil these out or ruler them out, if you will. I'm going with my Clip Click, which is one of my favorites. I like this one because the ink matches really well to most of the grids in our planners. And I'm going to go ahead and pull my paper out so it's a little easier for me to draw smoother. Using my little Clip Click, I'm just going to go in and outline one of these label size. That's really all I need. I wanted to go ahead and get these things put down, at least these couple of things, since I knew I was using squares for them and I wasn't going to like mark it off with my lines like I usually do. I wanted to have room for these for sure, because these are it's the main reason I use my planner. I wanted to get those down first so I could see where I could add extra artwork or other things. And I'm just going to go through all the way across the daytime of every single one of these, and then we'll start playing with really simple ideas for adding some details to a birthday spread and getting one done really quickly, because sometimes birthday weeks are going to be a little more busy if you're setting up for a birthday or a party, and you might not have as much time to plan during then. So I think this is a really good compromise to still get something cute out of it and not take as much effort as you might put into another week. I jumped ahead a little bit, and you can see I went ahead and did my bottom boxes for other things that I know for sure that I need every week, because that's part of the reason I actually use my planner. So I've got those down. Now I can play with pretty much everything else and move things around. I just chose, I can't give you the measurements, but this is apparently twin bed size for the larger square at the bottom, and then just another narrow one. I'm not great with R's, so that it looked kind of label-ish. That's what I'm sticking with, is my adaptation to how I usually just use line dividers. So this week I'm going to play with this a little bit. Now, I typically don't do a lot of pencil sketching or really pencil measurement when I do my doodles, but I did want to give this tip for this particular set of doodles. Depending on what size you want to make, we're working on candles, and depending on how tall you want them to be, you very well, if you didn't need all this middle space, you could really take up this entire thing. But if you want a little bit smaller to leave yourself still some room here, and you'll see how I plan on doing mine, I'm going to measure out roughly whatever height I want these to go to. And you can pretty much, since it's candles, you can pretty much get away with this same design in any height. But it'll just help me kind of keep them fairly even. This doesn't have to be perfect, and I'm actually doing mine a little bit wonky looking, so it makes it a little more fun and playful, and it helps make it a less serious, much faster design for a birthday week. Although when I talk through it, I know it makes it longer. So I'm personally at probably about 1.5 inches, I would kind of guess. And you know what, honestly, after looking at that line, see, I'm winging it all the way through. After looking at that line, I may actually want to go a little taller with that. I don't think I need a whole lot of space here personally, so I might actually take it. And I'm measuring from the bottom of that middle section of grids. So let's take it up just a little bit. I can always erase these lines, but I gotta tell you, even when you do them very faint, sometimes they can be hard to erase depending on what kind of pencil you use. This paper takes pencil really, really well. Well, let's go ahead and get my pencil down, because I want to pencil in something else as well. I tried to make them pretty faint, but maybe you can see what I did. I came up probably about 1/4 inch just above and marked myself another line. And this is just for me to maintain consistency and size, because I'm not super great at that. But now that I've got that in place, I want to start getting some color, and I want to designate which block is going to get what color, so I can remember to stick with that particular color scheme, since it is rainbow. I'm just going to start up here and work my way down a little bit so I don't smear nearly as bad. I'm using one of these. And with my straight edge, I'm going to try to go from edge to edge in one motion. Maybe get it looking like a label. And I'll do that all the way across in every color. So for me, that color scheme is going to go for each column. So downwards, I'm going to keep that color scheme all the way down with each one of these color labels here. And then I'm going to use the same colors to make a marker type divider or marker type washi tape. And we're going to play with our doodles. Hopefully I'll actually be able to get I completely put that upside down again. Hopefully I'll be able to get through the whole thing where I show all the little extras that I usually put on it at the end that I don't maybe always show. So I'm going to jump in and get these other colors done ahead of myself so that I can remember that color scheme all the way down, because on the end I'm swapping it up just a little bit and adding kind of an extra color to the end. I'm adding like a pink to the end, or a magenta to the end. Now I've got my color scheme established, and it just helps me visually because I'm going to kind of try to blend these colors in some areas. It helps me visually remember who is going where. This is what I've got going, and I pretty much got away with all the markers like this very easily. But I want to tell you that doing that same thing with this I didn't happen to have this color in one of the chunky markers, so I used a brush marker, and I do oftentimes have a problem using a brush marker with a ruler or a straight edge without smearing, and I did, and it's okay. You can see I made it bleed or smear a little bit right along that edge, maybe. No big deal. I'm still going to run with it. So I'm coming back with these little guys because I feel like this makes the simplest way for me. And I'm going to use them for dots. But once again, if measurements help you keep consistent, and they do for me sometimes, I'm penciling this in at about ½ inch. If you have that space available like you would with some washi tape, because that's basically what we're doing, is making some dotted washi tape across here. And I'm doing it in 2 places. You can do it wherever you really think you want to add it. I may wait on this one because I do need a little more room down here. So I'm just going to do this top one first, but I still think I may add it right across there. I'm just coming in with this one. And I want to give a couple warnings because I usually say that it's how you use your markers. So doing something like this, you might have a tendency to, staying in such a small spot, you might rest too long, and that resting on there saturates the paper more, and you're likely to bleed through. So be careful on that when you go to make these little dots. And I'm doing them in all kinds of sizes. Some of that information may be obvious to people sometimes, but if you're a little nervous about putting marker down on paper, those are things that you kind of start looking at, is how the paper and the marker react. And I think I'm just gonna throw a few polka dots in here. I might add one there. Just something. I did all different sizes. You could try to make them really even, but I just did them in different sizes. And I'm not going above this line. If you wanted to, you could tape it off with washi tape, or tape it off with Post-it notes and try to get it super flush against there. But I think this works fine. I'm just going to go through and do the same thing. But I did say that I wanted to gradiate, or do a gradient on some of these, which is why I needed it mapped out in color. And I think this one, I may, through this area, want to kind of mix the colors. So by that, I will show you really quick what I mean. I'm using the same kind of marker. I just found this easier. If you have those dot kind of markers, which I keep getting lured into. By the way, Dollar Tree has some of those. This is a side note if you're a Dollar Tree planner person. They have some of those Jot brand dot markers where the tip just lets you dot down. And they have a lined version also. But all the Happy Planner paper that I have tested it on, every single version, the dot, the lines, they all have bled through the paper. So I'm going to go ahead and come in with this aqua brushed one. And you can do this on all of them if you want to really add a whole lot more color. Basically the same thing, it's just I'm mixing them in this square. And I'm taking a darker blue. And that way I had them kind of blend off into that. Oh, I smeared it. It's okay, I'm not going to freak out. Same thing here. I think I have other purple colors in between those shades. I really could do it there also. You could do it with any of them. I just happen to have wanted to do it with this one so I could work in the darker blue also. So you can see where that is going. And to me, that was a lot easier if I hadn't been talking so much. That's a lot easier on something like this, especially if you wanted to mix all those colors, but trying to do it with washi tape. Getting it in between those squares, every single one, and having every color you needed in a pattern or something like that. This was so much simpler. So I'm going to go ahead and finish this section up here with these other colors. I did a little bit of an extra sheet so I could show you this tip. I'm not going to use it on mine, but I did want to show you just in case some of your dots were maybe not your best dot work and you're not happy with this overall unevenness, or you didn't get them as even as you would like, and you don't want to risk trying to even them out with your marker again and it bleeding through the back. I'm taking just some little circle stencils and I'm going to try to match as close to the size that I had there. And I'll do this on at least all the ones large enough for me to circle around. I don't know if I can get my pen in that one, but we'll try. Yeah, I made it. Okay. So I could do even the tiny ones. I might have would have tried to freehand those. But that gives a much cleaner look to all your dots across there. But I kind of liked the little more playful version, but I did want to share that too if you didn't get them as perfect as you wanted them. Now I can jump into using this color scheme to kind of guide me. That's why I went through these steps this direction. It's going to guide me on which colors I want to start doing my candles with. And I'm just going to start down on this end and work my way down. So maybe I'm less likely to smear. I'm going to hope for that. This is so simple. This is why I gave myself some guidelines, and you could always sketch these out with a perfect little rectangle to get perfectly shaped, but these are going to be a little more on the whimsical side. Mine are going to be whimsical, but you could outline them. And I'm just taking this marker width about 2 wide. I think that should make it wide enough. This is great if you can't do super straight lines. That's why I said I thought this one was fun and simple and kind of fit all my needs for this 1 week. And I'm just going to alternate some directions. I'm trying to do a pretty decent job at this stage, and you can see that these markers are pretty wet. You want to just try to get in 2 strokes and not cross those strokes too much. If you're using something like this to get the width, highlighters would work really well too because they have a chisel tip that helps you get those lines nice and straight. I think I'll stick with orange on this one. I think I'll stick with the same orange. I was thinking about going darker, but honestly, this marker is so quick to use to go up and down like that. I'm not even sure I got the right width. It's okay. My yellow, you know what? I might actually go with a darker yellow. Let's see, what do I have close to me? I piled a bunch of markers over here, so I'll try it this way. Yellow's a little hard to see sometimes in the kids' yellows. Sometimes they can be super bright. And it might not show up super well on here, but maybe you can see. That's not too bad. And I truly, if I wanted to, could try. Let's see if I can line this up some kind of way. Normally I would tape something like this down, but since these are whimsical, I don't think this will hurt. I might even do it down the center. I very seldom go down the center because sometimes I get concerned, especially when I'm hitting the paper there, that the saturation from a marker would just weaken that even more and risk making those pages not want to stick as well. So I don't typically do a whole lot of decoration down through that part, but I think it'll work on this one. And it's really just spreading them out, trying to, this is the big size. I can fit 3 candles this width really nicely, but another fun idea might be to try to match up the number of candles to whose birthday age it might be that you're celebrating. So that might be a fun idea to use this that way as well. See, I'm going to find this one just a hair harder because of not having that same wide tip, I think. Do I want to do this or do I want to? I'm torn. I'm so torn. I think I'm going to do the darker blue. I was trying to decide. I did not do super well on this one. I went really narrow with that. I usually try to lean it over. I don't think I'm leaning that one good enough. There we go. It's a little better. Y'all see they're crazy. They are certainly not perfect. Don't worry, we can clean all of that up. That's why this one is such a fun, simple one. I think maybe I would have this might work a little better for me, this angle. There we go. I can turn it a little on its side easier. That one's going on really well. You could always change your candle colors to somebody's favorite color scheme. I just think of, March makes me think of rainbows. And this particular kid's birthday, he loves all colors. He's like me. Color just makes him happy. So there we go. I just wanted to share how I did that because I didn't want you to think that if you did not get these perfect at this stage that it would make this turn out worse. You're fine. Get yourself to a stage like this or close enough, and I can show you a couple different ways to either make it a little more whimsical like I'm doing, or to make it a really clean, kind of clean line and clean edge candle. At this stage, I'm coming in with my favorite white gel pen. If you just have a white, I'm using the Uniball Signo, and I'm just going to go from edge to edge on these. Almost in a little bit of a curve, but you know what, it's not a big deal. I'm not worried if it's super perfect. I may come in and do a polka dot one. I don't personally want to do too many polka dots since I know I have them here and I'll have maybe more polka dots down here, so I may only throw in a few just for a different pattern. I might even switch the direction of my little diagonal lines. feel like that one needs another stripe. You could totally take your time and try to perfect all these details, but kind of the point of this one I wanted to show was a really quick marker page. So I'll keep going across and rotate a few out with the polka dots and the lines. Now that I'm at this stage, I'm coming back in with the same markers and picking a side or an edge of pretty much most of them. I stayed to one side, but you could kind of look at it depending on which way it's leaning down. That may be the side that you run this down again, and you'll see what I mean. So I'm going to try to do my best to just pull it down one edge. And this is a really good time if you had any edges that were super awful and you needed to clean them up or straighten them up. You might want to come in with a straight edge and guide that a little bit if you felt like you went a little haywire. So I'm just going to pick all to the left side and just stick with it that way so it's easiest to remember. And just did that one side, and I'll do that with every color. The same colors. I'm not even going with any extra markers or having to have multiple shades of the same marker. So that's part of why I switch around so often and move back and forth so much when I use my markers, is it gives other things time to dry so that I can layer that color on there. And the yellow, what did I use? I think I used this little guy on that yellow. So I may need to wait on that. That, as I was saying, I do that in order to give time to dry so I can add more layers of color with less risk of it bleeding through or ghosting on the other side. And I thought I would straighten that one a little bit because I've got it right there in that crease. So that's a little helpful if I went too poor of a shape. So I'm going to go ahead and do that to the left side of all of these. And then we're going to come back and do kind of the very same thing on the other side with white. So this is the stage we're pretty much at now. I'm going to do the very same thing like I said. If I seem distracted, I don't know if you guys can hear all that. We've had funnel clouds touching down this evening and the wind is wild. Right behind my head is a window and I can hear it so loud in my ear. I might use a ruler to do this, or I might not. It's not necessary. You can still do this super whimsical. And I'll show you. I won't take this one too seriously. I may clean up one of the lines on my purple. I'm just doing the opposite side now with this white and trying to get as straight of a line as I can. Close enough. That is not my strong suit, but I want to make the mistakes so that you're not afraid to. So I'll do the same thing all the way down, sticking to whatever the opposite side was that I darkened. So far, so good. I am going to try to use my Papermate Flare. I have hit or miss luck on using these. Sometimes they can bleed through on me, even at my best attempts. But I do like the line and the thickness. And this has always been one of my most favorite writing pens. If I had one that was entirely dismal, let's see, do I have one that I just, maybe this one. Let's do this one really quick. I might make these lines a little more even if it was a problem. if you have one that just came out really poorly. But seriously, don't take it this seriously. So I would do that. But otherwise, I'm just taking this real simple and coming in on the tops of these. I'm just doing a curve. And if you wanted to do something a little more on a candle, if it seemed like it was leaning like this one, let me find one. So these are mostly uneven. I want you to notice that as I'm doing that curve across it, they're not super even at the tops of these, but when I throw that thicker pen line across that, it definitely hides any of that. So that's why I wasn't too worried about taking it seriously. But let's say you get one and the top edge is like that. Quick fix for that guy. I'm going to do that same curve, and I might do one down. And now it's dimensional, and it helped hide a little bit better where those top sections didn't necessarily hit super even. Same with your bottom. So I'm going to go through and just do those top curves for all of these guys. And essentially, I'm just going to outline everything. But I wanted to show a few ways to kind of self-correct if you do find that you were a little too overly whimsical, maybe. That's why I don't like to take a lot of my errors out, because I learn from those. Same thing. I typically try to do similar lines at the same time while my hand is, I don't know, comfortable with that motion. Kind of like, writing lines when you were a kid. If you ever went to a school that made you write lines. So I'm going to go ahead and finish the outline on these. And this is also a place where you can self-correct. For instance, it looks like that guy might be a little skinny. In comparison to everyone else, it seems a little skinny. Let's see if we can correct this kind of right here at this spot. And I just went a little outside the edge of my marker line just to self-correct. And you know what? You can still see that there is a color gap in there. Right between there where I extended it. Don't worry about those, because it will just add a little more concept of highlight and low light. I don't really know where they're supposed to belong, but usually if I get one in there, I feel pretty good about it. This one I might do just the opposite, just to, it was a little wide. I would come in just a hair to narrow it down. Something like that. I would do the same thing on it. So I'm going to pull my outline in a little bit, and that usually tends to be very helpful visually if you did go a little whimsically crazy, or just outline them just like they are, because that's just as fun too. And most of these, that's just what I'm going to do. So my outlines are done, and you can see, I want to give you a chance to look and see. They are, I left them a little more on the crazy side. This is why I did that extra little line right there, just so I could make sure that I kept my flames relatively in the same place. I'm just going to pop in. And I'm doing the same thing with these. I'm throwing them at different angles. So just a little wick. I found this to be the easiest way to get them pretty close to the same size. And you wouldn't even have to do any flames on there at this stage, because that's pretty cute for a start. I'm going to do a little bit more with it, and I'm bringing in one of these daubers, these little finger daubers that are for ink. I have alternatives though. Dollar Tree sells these little round brushes. A wedge like this, a little spongy makeup wedge like this. You probably could even accomplish this with a Q-tip. And even if you don't have an ink pad, I'm trying to get this thing open. It is bagged very well. Even if you don't have an ink pad, don't panic. So even something like this you could probably use. You can come in with your yellow marker. I've just got a piece of plastic here, literally from packaging, that I just colored that on. So I can take from here, and I want to stay consistent on mine, so I'll just use some scratch paper. I'm just going to move that in a little bitty circle and just kind of work my way out. Same way with the makeup sponge. I'm not sure if there's enough ink on here to make it work, but we'll try. There was less ink, but maybe you can see. Yellow is a pretty light color, and it doesn't have to be dark. I'm going to go ahead and do mine, and I'm just going to go somewhere above where my wicks are. And I'm still going to add a flame, but you wouldn't have to. I'm just taking these things extra because I wanted to share the ideas. I feel like I got a little extra ink on that, but let's see. Can I get this middle? This one's a little tougher because I don't want to mess up my punched areas. So I might just carefully spin it there. And I pretty much stuck with, just so it wouldn't be too much, I pretty much stuck with like one glow area above every 2 candles wherever I could. So instead of being over every single one, I thought that might be less busy. If you really wanted to, you could stop here. And the cool thing about doing this is you would still have all this space to write in if you wanted to. But since I know I'm probably not going to need that much space for this particular week, I'm going to add a flame to this even. And I want to give you a couple cheats on the flame as well. I'm just coming in with my orange, whatever orange you want to use. Or you could use a darker yellow, but for this one, the orange was there. That's what I'm using. And right at the top of that wick, I'm mostly just putting like a little, just a little orange spot. And once again, this is a stage that you could stop at and it still would be pretty cute. So even that would work. I'm going to keep it going though. I'm bringing in the yellow and I'm going right over where I did the orange, and I'm going to try to maintain an oval teardrop shape, but I can't make any promises. And I am going straight into the orange. Try not to oversaturate, but it's yellow. It's maybe not as big of a risk if yellow bleeds through. It's a light enough color. So it's helping blend some of that orange upward. And I'm doing pretty good at keeping consistent with my shape, but they don't all have to be exactly the same unless you want them exactly the same. And I will show you a way to get that as well. Look at your stencils if you happen to have any. If you happen to have these kind of things. So this should be a leaf, but it would make a very good candle flame. They also have a teardrop on some of these for weather, or a raindrop for weather. So you might use a shape like that. So think about those things. Even here, this little lotus, you could very well use that center. You could use this one. A lot of things that you can look at and maybe get a consistent one if you wanted that 100% consistency, easy for you to say, across all of these. I think maybe I will use this size one. And I might flip-flop it every couple of candles. And this is where this penciled in line is also helpful. It's allowing me to have a really nice spot to line this up and get my flames in the same spot. I just inked myself. This is why I'm always covered. So I'm just going to go through and do that for all of those. And then you can have some consistency. However, let's just see how bad I do. Or maybe how well I do. Let's find out. Can I keep it consistent? Oh, not bad, not bad. So one side of mine I will do maybe super consistent and do the other side uneven, so you can have something to glance at to see if you'd rather go whimsical. I don't think those were too bad. They were pretty close to the stencil size. I think that's so much faster, I may not bother with the stencil at all. But I did want to show that you could look at items a little differently and find them useful if you wanted that consistency for this particular project. Okay, that's where I'm at this stage. I can come in and maybe throw a shadow under these guys. And I wanted to show, I did test it out somewhere, and let's see if I've got that little test. I do. Okay, I wanted to show two different shadow ideas because I thought both were fun. I'm doing this with this light gray, but if you were just trying to get away with this whole project out of a pack of these kind of markers, grab the black one, and it gives a really nice, you see, I did not even come down all the way. I didn't do it super great, but the black made it pop as a shadow as well. I just happened to be using the gray this time around, but I wanted to show that. I wanted to give you a bunch of ideas to maybe do this a little different every month that you have a birthday you want to do one on, that you could just use this same idea recycled. And my marker is trying so hard to bleed. Flair, I do have a love frustration relationship with my Flair markers or my Flair pens. I'm not even being super consistent on this one about what side I'm putting the shadow on with this light gray. Typically, I just choose one side and stick with it. That's how I set my shading and shadowing rules. So I'm going to finish doing this and maybe add a few more things, share a couple more things if we have a little extra time. You guys have sat and watched me make mistakes all the way through this and oops all the way through this. And this is still a layout that I can be happy with, or it's a spread that I can be happy with. It is playful, it is whimsical, and I definitely wanted to share any errors that came across on this one because I felt like it was such a good birthday go-to idea that I really had to share. I'm going to come in now at this point before I add any more boxes or squares and try to clean up some of my pencil lines if you still have those there. This might be a good time to clean them up. I still think that I may want to add my faux washi down here. I'm still trying to make up my mind if I can squeeze that in. I was worried it would be too many dots, but I really love pattern. I love to mix patterns. I think that comes from my scrapbooking days and enjoying mixing the pattern papers. So that came off pretty well. Try not to smear anything. That's the other tip that I wanted to give you. I knew there was a reason. That was the other thing, is if you're gonna erase anything, try to give yourself a little bit of time, especially if you're erasing over your markers and pen. Try to give it a little bit of time before you go in and start doing that, because sometimes it can, depending on what eraser. This is just a regular pink one. A lot of times it's kind of my go-to, but it can smear some of that ink if it's not fully dry. Not always, but save yourself the heartache. Okay, I'm happy with this. I want to add some things and maybe share a couple other ideas. So now you can see that I have added a few more boxes and squares, places that I know I'm going to need them. I've come in with just this koi light gray. Any gray would work. I could use, let's see, I could use a highlighter, just something gray. And I don't even complicate this very much. You could go all the way around or down two sides, but so that it doesn't take up all that much room, typically, maybe you can see that, I just get a little portion right in the middle. I don't even come end to end. I just try to get it under there so that there's some kind of shadow. I don't take that too seriously. Even on a less whimsical page, I still just throw something there. So I've added just some little squares. You can do that with a ruler. You can do that with your marker. I've added some lines, and that was simply just a ruler. I did add a little chart over here for hydration this week. I wanted to try it a slightly different way. This gives me enough width where, I don't know, can you see? This is a dot grid on here. It's got this dot grid pattern. So it gave me just enough width to get a chart right all the way from edge to edge of those dots. That's as wide as I took it. And it allowed me 2 spaces here for my day of the week and numbering over to 9, which if you're doing 8 glasses a day of water, that gives you a little extra room if you need it. I've also been doing something similar with sleep, if you've seen, so I may still add that one. Obviously, I have things that I've got to come in here and fill in, but I wanted to give the basics. This one was a pretty fun one. I think it's pretty cute. You can always take it to your own personal creative level. You can think about this similar concept and dropping it down along the bottom. You could always turn to the side and do it up this side as well, so that you can still use such a simple idea of the little candles, but maybe each month you'll have a little variation of it. So that's a fun idea I wanted to share. And I think that's everything. If you're curious about the weather, I just hand doodle those on there. They're never consistent. If you look, none of the clouds are ever consistent, but I think once they're up there, it's okay. I believe that's everything I wanted to share with you on this one. Like I said, it was going to be simple. It was going to be basic. I know it was still long because of me explaining all the things, but I think this is one I don't know. I did a practice on it. I did a practice run on it to test what markers were going to hold up to what I wanted to do. I was pretty sure what I was going to use. And I went through that one really, really quickly without describing it and just going through for myself. So for a birthday week, I think this was super fun. Still got to use all my markers and have my fun time with that and customize it a little bit. But otherwise, it's honestly a really quick doodle page where you can still say you did it. I had fun with this washi tape look, and I do think it was a whole lot less effort to sit and do this really quickly than if I'd have had to try to get all the washi tape cut so perfectly within those squares. I don't always find that the easiest to do, and I can't keep washi tape on my pages to begin with because eventually they just start curling off. I really feel like our humidity factors in on that. I'm not sure. I think it's maybe a little bit humidity and a little bit of the heat, and I can't keep stuff like that stuck down. So this is a much better option for me. And if you don't have a big washi tape collection, this is kind of a fun way to maybe try to match to a color that you're already working on and you don't have any to match. So that's all I got to share. I'm going to have a little bit of fun and fill out some things on here that are a little, it is a birthday week, so there's going to be things that are a little more personal to my family that I didn't necessarily want to throw on here at this stage. But I hope you had fun with it. I love that it's colorful. I don't usually do it kind of this breakdown. I usually keep it pretty continuous, but I do kind of visually like this and might try it for some other things. And I plan to hang out with you guys soon. I've got some other colorful ideas for March and just some little simple ones, maybe to get your feet wet in. This was a really simple one. It's not very complex, but it is fun. Talk to you guys soon. Bye, y'all.